Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent experiences in business.
Learn what their cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
All right, welcome, cohesive leaders. We are joined today. I've got Dr. Troy and myself, Ben-Jamin, here, and we've got MK Palmore joining us in from California. Welcome to the show.
Gents, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Excellent. We want to start off the same way we start off every program. Share something with us and our listeners that they wouldn't find on a LinkedIn bio or a professional resume or CV. Share something just kind of off the wall, unique.
All right, there you go. Do you see the drum set behind me, the acoustic drum set?
Heck yeah.
I am a hobbyist drummer, and I have very eclectic music taste and range everything from traditional or contemporary jazz all the way through fusion, some rock, R&B, and lots of other things. And I like getting on the drum set on the weekend and kind of jamming away. It's my therapy.
Do you have a favorite song?
I've got multiple favorite songs. How about favorite artists? I'll start with Sting, who I've been listening to since I was a teenager. I was a fan of the Police, but when he broke out on his own for his first solo album, Dream of the Blue Turtles, still my favorite album today. I can listen to it end to end. So he's my favorite, but I got lots of songs I jam to. For sure.
I love it. That's really great.
Now, is this room that you're in right now set aside from anywhere else, or when you're playing, everybody gets to enjoy it?
No, I had the gratefully a couple of years back had the opportunity to build sort of an external office and studio to my home, and it doubles as a home office, but it's also my music studio. So there's a little bit of soundproofing, and although it's not perfectly soundproofed, it does muffle it quite a bit, so I don't disturb the neighbors or anyone else.
That's awesome.
That's really great. Yeah,
Thoughtful neighbor.
I know. Yeah, I have very little musical talent, although I'd like to. What I lack in tone, I make up for in volume.
You're just really good at the harmonica when my head's out the window at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah. And everyone hums and sings in the shower, so I'm sure there's some musical talent.
Something. Yeah, it always sounds better there than it does anywhere else, right?
Of course it does.
So we'd now like to know a little bit of something about you. So now we'd like you to describe yourself using descriptive words, not titles. So these descriptive words might be words that you would hope that people would say about you when you leave the room. Of course, They might say these things about you when you're still in the room as well.
Yeah. Fairly serious, super competent, a guy who gets stuff done. And that's my mantra, the sort of GSD approach to everything in life. I'm a person that gets things across the finish line. So I lead with my competency. Anyone that's interacted with me professionally will know that I hope to be at least one of the most competent people that you come across professionally. And I am very focused on the people-centered aspect of leading. Throughout my life and my experiences, I've been fortunate enough to be in lots of leadership scenarios. And what I've learned over time is that putting the focus on people is really what it's all about. And if someone can walk away from an interaction saying that guy took an interest in me, he cared, then professionally, that's the goal that I have in every interaction.
So MK, I want to ask you about this self-confidence. So there's a fine line between self-confidence and ego. Tell me, how do you balance that?
I've got a really, really interesting career path, or I've had a very interesting career path. It's enabled me from an opportunity standpoint to test my mettle, so to speak. I've been in lots of adverse circumstances and situations as both a member of the armed services and also a federal law enforcement official over the course of a 22-year career. And I've not always gotten everything right, but I will tell you that I walk away from every experience having learned important things that I take into my new experiences, and iterations build confidence. And once you've done a thing multiple times, and whether you've been successful or not, if you've taken away the lessons, that builds confidence moving into very familiar territory or similar scenarios.
I want to ask about what possibly could be a dichotomy or paradox, because at first when you said you're the get done finish line, and a lot of times folks have that vision that it's in spite of or at the expense of people, and yet you said you're people oriented. So how do you balance those two when sometimes the task oriented approach of getting things done is at the expense of people?
Here's the big shift that I've had to learn as a leader over time. I was brought up in a leadership factory. I attended one of the U.S. service academies. I then went on to be a commissioned officer in the U.S. Marine Corps. And in both of those experiences, college and then the Marines, mission first was the mantra that was always applied to every scenario. Accomplish the mission. And that's important. What I subsequently learned over time in both the FBI and my experience in the enterprise space is that when you put people first, you will automatically set yourself up to accomplish the mission. If you are taking care of people, your mission, by dividend of your investment in them, will actually happen. And so the focus on them always yields dividends. And not only do you take care of them and have them walk away from the experience, having known someone take an interest in them and invest and poured in them, they automatically will work harder to accomplish the thing that you've set out as part of the mission.
Yeah, we are already in agreement and alignment because we build all of our cohesive programs on the transformative principle that says you focus on the needs of others before self. So it's not a martyrism.
Absolutely.
You're not necessarily forgetting about you. You just don't put yourself first. You put others first and then self. And it kind of really comes full circle. And when we look at the definition of leadership that we use, it's about motivating, influencing, and enabling others to be successful. So really great.
Well, all right. That's a great show, folks. Thanks for listening. That was a lot of great nuggets right there already. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, really.
But that was so good just to start with.
Yeah.
All right. So we got to learn who MK is. Now, you've already mentioned some of the roles. So let's hear about some of those hats and roles you have as far as bigger picture, personal stuff, and roles you've had.
Yeah. So again, I'll go back to my my college days. I was fortunate to attend the United States Naval Academy, the only place I ever wanted to go to college. It was a dream and aspiration from the time I was in elementary school. A career in service to the country was something that I had imagined for myself pretty early on, and I defined the route and was able to take the steps that I had defined for myself. So attended Annapolis, really tough experience. Maybe certainly academically the toughest thing that I've ever done. Was able to go on, get a commission from that experience, became an officer in the United States Marine Corps. The 5 years in the Marines, I think, set the foundational pieces for my understanding of the discipline of leadership. And certainly I was surrounded by a lot of high functioning, high execution leaders for whom I could learn from and adapt in terms of how it is that they approach leadership. And then I went on to a 22-year career as a special agent in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I applied to and only intended to be a federal law enforcement official for one agency, and that was the FBI. And it was the history of the FBI and all of the various things that they have under their mandate to investigate that attracted me to the organization. And that career for an organization that, again, has spanned more than 100 years and the 300 plus violations of federal code that they're responsible for investigating, in addition to the national security component, allowed me over a 22-year career to do a variety of things. I like to say I went through a 22-year career and I did everything I wanted to do in the FBI. I served in a tactical capacity for 2 FBI SWAT teams. I investigated bank robberies in the city of Los Angeles when it was still considered the bank robbery capital of the world. I conducted counterterrorism investigations. I traveled the world on behalf of the FBI. Later, when I became a cybersecurity leader in the Bureau, and I got exposure to what I might call the most present issue from a business operations and risk standpoint of our time, and that is the challenges associated with technology as it relates to cybersecurity over the course of that career. I then retired from government service, doesn't end there, and I went on to work for 2 Fortune 500 companies in the cybersecurity realm, Palo Alto Networks and Google Cloud, as an executive in both. And that gave me an overall exposure when combined with my service to the biggest challenges on the cybersecurity landscape that commercial and enterprise customers experience. And I subsequently parlayed that experience at 2 Fortune 500 companies in my service into building my own company, Apogee Global RMS, where I lead the cyber and physical risk vertical. And we also have a strategy and talent acquisition vertical, because I believe that all of those things are interrelated. I don't want to be a consultant that just comes in and talks technology. People are a component of that transformation process as well. So we include it as part of our offering.
It's really great. I just want to thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's get to the meat of it. So today is our little experience that you have thought about to share with us. And although you might speak about, because of your extensive background, you might think of a situation that happened at a particular company or organization that you were with, and that's great. But we want to hear from it from your perspective. So want to make sure that it's relatable to you, because the individuals that are listening are trying to learn from the mistakes, the mishaps, and the mayhem that sort of occur out there in leadership. That we often have these experiences that occur, but yet we still survive. And so we'll get to all the pieces. But first, why don't you set up for us what your experience is that you wanted to share today?
Yeah, so my experiences might be a little different than some of the guests that you've had on previously. My focus on people as the center of all things leadership occurred and came to me over time. As I had stated earlier, there was a focus in the leadership factories and the sort of discipline factories and institutions that I was a part of, to focus in on the mission. Of course, they always mentioned the people as a component of it, but they didn't emphasize or place people first in those statements. And it was during my career in the FBI where, and I've spoke about this in keynotes and on stage before, over the course of my first 8 years in the FBI, I personally came to know 5 people who committed suicide. Those 5 people were outstanding servants, people who had joined the FBI to serve their country. They had become overcome by their personal circumstances, so much so, and to be frank, the job didn't provide them any kind of relief or help them to relieve the pressure from their personal lives. And they each reached a point during that course of time where they decided that taking their own lives was the only pathway out. And I knew them each personally, some more than others. But the fact that you go through an early stage of a career and you begin, like I did during my time in the Bureau, thinking mission, 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 let's get in here and do what we can for the sake of the country, uphold justice. This is the mandate of FBI agents. And I was, becoming a part of an institution for whose history was really about the idea of supporting the U.S. justice system. And that's all well and good. But at the same time, I saw people, individuals whom were great people, some of them had families, leave this world because of the pressures of their individual lives. Now, could leadership in the FBI have saved those folks? And oh, by the way, those weren't the last folks. I mentioned 5 in the span of 8 years. There were more over the course of my 22-year career. But I mentioned those because it was such a short, compacted time period. And I always look back on that time period as the thing that was really the shift for me. And it's not that the work wasn't, yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So I think that, and certainly, gosh, what a, traumatic setup that you've created there from that situation. But what is your experience? Like, what was it that you made the mistake, the mishap that created mayhem around this for you? What was something that you experienced? I get the whole result of watching others. And what we don't want to do is overgeneralize this podcast response, as in, here's the situation for leaders who might feel or be like this. This is a very personal sort of approach where you get to say, I messed up because I didn't do this. What is that for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of those circumstances that out of the 5 that I mentioned was someone who was in close proximity to me from a leadership standpoint. I was thrust into leadership roles fairly early on in the FBI because I had been identified as someone who was capable of leading. And when I was placed into a leadership scenario, this person was already in distress, already part of what would be identified from a human resources standpoint, someone who needed assistance and help. And quite frankly, maybe they've gotten better at this over time, but the FBI really as an organization really wasn't built to handle people who were experiencing mental health challenges during the course of their career. Again, there are mechanisms in place. The FBI, I think, probably like any law enforcement organization, has gotten better at this over time. But during those early days, I don't think the necessary mechanisms were in place. And I think people didn't see the problem as striking as it grew to be. Law enforcement community, veterans, maybe 22 veterans a day commit suicide. Here in the United States, those are United States Armed Services veterans. And so the problem has become more acute over time. But in those early days, when this was sort of developing as a huge problem in law enforcement communities, it wasn't readily seen that, hey, the organization should collapse in on these people and support them through this challenge that they were going through in their lives. And again, this individual in close proximity from a leadership standpoint, I could have advocated for more for that person to be basically helped rather than watch this person be sidelined and placed into a scenario where they think they didn't have an out. And it was because of, the culture and the environment at the time, quite frankly, again, mission focused. Hey, we got a job to do. There was almost a perception, if I don't mind saying that, there was almost a perception as if you're not ready to engage in the mission, then you're sidelined. And when you're sidelined, folks typically forget about you. If you need help, go get help and take your time off. But, the organization really was not built to help you get through that. And again, although I think that's changed over time, I think that as a young leader, my lesson from that was advocacy, like advocating for the people and those individuals at the time, because inevitably someone knows that people are in distress, inevitably, whether it's their family members, coworkers, close friends, whatever the case may be. And oftentimes people need someone to advocate for them or to assist them, let them know it's okay to ask for help in those scenarios. And if you don't do that, if you don't create a culture where people understand that you can ask for help, then they don't. And what happens is the scenario that I just described for you, where 5 individuals who probably, quite frankly, still should be with us. They should have completed their careers in the FBI, just like I had the opportunity to complete my career. Could have had families. And then again, in some instances they did, could have had families and extended their lives, maybe gotten through that tough period because I and others weren't people focused or people focused enough to recognize that, again, the mission was going to get accomplished, but that those individuals needed help at that time. And maybe it required us to diminish the mission slightly in order to allow those people the grace and time to rebuild themselves.
So I want to be careful here with this because we're talking about mental health and it's a very serious topic. And we certainly understand the impact it has, the negative impact it has in the world, not only to leadership, but to individuals' personal lives. So I don't want to underplay or undermine that. But I wanted to just be clear that the piece that I thought I heard you say was your experience was specifically around you not recognizing that you could do more for this individual and coming up with, I should have been more of an advocate voice for it. So can you share with us when that revelation came forward for you? Was it more in afterwards when you look back and see the tragedy of these 5 in this very short period of time? Or was it something that you began to recognize during the process and then you corrected it as you were going? So
No, yeah, no, it wasn't immediate. It was definitely over time. And again, it's, no one ever ascribed blame to me, and no one actually ever ascribed blame to anyone in any of those scenarios. But what it was a stark realization to me that both as an organization and as individual leaders, that we could do a better job at helping people through those situations. And I think it was more so the fact that, again, I named or listed, I didn't name those 5. There were more to follow. If I think the total number over the course of my 22-year career of people that I personally knew, the number probably gets to 8 or 9. And then on top of it, since retiring, have known retired individuals that I spent an entire career with, who I lost contact with them, but subsequently you're notified that they took their lives. It's just, I don't know. That to me, that's the ultimate of people in distress, and people, folks need help. None of us are going through this journey by ourselves. And the reason it's a component of leadership for me, or something that needs to be aware for leaders, is because, individuals come to work in their professions as their full selves. They bring everything with them. You may not want to hear about it, but when an individual shows up from 9 to 5, they're carrying with them every experience that they have, to include their personal lives. And it's incumbent upon you as a leader to understand that that is a component of who they are at work. And if you want to get the best out of them, you rest assured, you better be paying attention, or at least creating a culture where people feel comfortable bringing to you things that are potentially happening and occurring in their lives outside of the workplace. Because the person that you're getting is a person who is experiencing their whole life, not just the 9 to 5 of working with and for you.
all right, so I want to change the tone of our message here a little bit, because I want to be clear that what you expressed was personal to you, that this podcast is not about providing the direction or help to individuals who might be suffering from mental health or issues specifically around suicide. That an individual with you proclaimed that you did not think that you were enough of an advocate voice, or enough to see. We don't want anyone leaving this session thinking that everyone should try to figure out what to do with their advocate voice for others, because having been somewhat involved in this situation personally, you cannot put yourself into a spot of owning blame or taking responsibility for that. So what I want to shift to is, I would like you to change your experience for us, so that we can have a little bit more dialogue, because it's really hard for us to dialogue into this, because it makes it sound like we're trying to hone in on, hey, you should have known more, you should have paid attention more, than these other lives would have been around. Well, I don't want anyone to get that feeling. So I want to focus on something like communication for you. What was an experience for you in the areas of communication that you own as a leader? You said, oh my gosh, I didn't do this well. And I don't want it to be wrapped around the previous conversation around suicide. I want you to just think generally, as your leadership role with all of these companies, all these people that you've been around, what was a communication faux pas that you created?
Yeah, early in my career, and I can appreciate you wanting to bifurcate the conversation. Early in my career, I remember as a Marine officer failing to communicate effectively with a couple of my senior enlisted folks. If you're familiar at all with the organization of the services, as a young officer, newly commissioned, you could be in charge of folks who've been around and spent much more of a career in the armed forces than you have. It is impressed upon you all of the time that you have to rely on these folks in order to be able to get your job done. And I think I early on did not really understand the clear value in that, in working to build an influence-like environment with them, as opposed to dictating courses of action and policy. And what I learned through that lack of communication, that lack of openness that I had was that, it's easy for things to be miscommunicated in a lack of communication. It's easy for folks to make their own judgments about what may be the focus of effort or the objective or what is attempting to be communicated. And so I learned from those particular instances, and one instance in particular, again, with a senior enlisted Marine who I thought was extremely competent, that I had miscommunicated something to my team and did not spend enough time communicating, has since affected me over the course of my career to understand that over communication is an okay thing for a leader to do. I would rather have folks say, wow, I hear from that guy too much, rather than I don't hear from him at all. And oftentimes as leaders, I think it's almost, it's like we have to, it's almost broken up into those two angles. You're either over communicating or you're not communicating enough. And you don't want to be on the bottom end of that, because a lack of communication ultimately results in a lack of effectiveness for the team. Yes. We talk a lot about things like strategy at the leadership level. A strategy is only as good as how many times you amplify it to the folks who are responsible for executing on it. So it's not enough just to throw together a good strategy, put it into a PowerPoint and present it one time to the team. It needs to be communicated nearly every time that you get in front of them to reinforce what the clear objectives are and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So, communication, a key component of effective leaders. I think, I don't like ranking and stacking leadership characteristics and values, but if I had to pick one thing that I think is the difference between good to great, it's absolutely a high level of communication. If you want to be a great leader, someone who's highly effective, respected, and you need folks to understand the path that you're taking them on, the journey that they happen to be executing with you, you absolutely have to be a high level communicator, and it has to be part of your toolkit.
That's awesome. Oh, sorry.
As Ben is choking here from a small bout of pollen season here, I guess the question we would ask you is, what did it cost you what did this cost?
Well, in that particular incident, I think it cost me the relationship with that senior enlisted Marine. Our relationship was never the same again after the fact. And you look back on it, it feels like it was such a silly thing. Like all I had to do was communicate better as a leader, and maybe I could have had a lifelong relationship, which I have had with lots of people that I served with. I still am in communication with folks, and you don't want any relationship to fall by the wayside, especially ones that you value. And I absolutely valued my time in the Marine Corps, and so it's important to me to maintain those relationships, even if it's just a cursory checking in with one another from time to time to see how folks are doing. This particular Marine I haven't been in contact with since I left service, and that was definitely a hard lesson to learn.
And what are you doing now to prevent this? So, you mentioned about, I think you said, you can't over communicate, that's really a good thing. So now that you recognize, hey, communication, something I should have done, cost me a relationship, what are you doing now to make sure that you do over communicate?
I'm over communicating, and I'm being open to the fact that maybe I fall back into my old ways from time to time. And I've surrounded myself with enough folks to tell me, hey, we need to hear more from you on this. And I say, Roger that, I got it. And I lean back into it and begin to, again, recognize that more communication for me is always better, especially now as I'm leading my own firm. One of the reasons I stood out or stepped out, should I say, from the enterprise space to lead my own firms, because I wanted to create my own leadership culture. I got tired of relying on enterprise or others to create a culture for which I would fit into. I wanted to create my own leadership culture, and I want to create an environment, one, where folks feel comfortable coming to me as the boss and saying, hey, boss, we need this from you or that from you, or hey, this is blocked, we need you to unblock it. And maybe if they're not in line with the vision, it's okay to come to me and say, I need to understand this better from you. Can you explain it to me? And that's a clue to me that, one, that I should be doing more talking about the vision that I see in my head. It's easy for me. I'm the one who comes up with the vision and says, here's where we're going. but you have to communicate that to everybody to bring them along on the journey. You can't just assume that they're getting everything that they need because you presented it to them tightly in one presentation that you made to them. You got to take them on the journey week to week, because the vision changes and begins to morph over time. And you might recognize those changes as an entrepreneur or leader, but your team doesn't see it unless you explain it to them.
Yeah. So in your own words, how would you describe the difference between you providing more information, like over communicating, versus micromanaging?
Yeah, I want to arm people with enough information so that they can do their jobs. And I think that that's the important piece. If people don't have enough information to execute on their own, then you have essentially not given them the things that they need to perform at a level that you're expecting them to perform at. And so I see over communication, and I don't see communicating or over communicating as interference with someone's job. I see it as me arming them with the things that they need to be able to execute the vision without me having to be involved in every step of the way.
With what Dr. Troy had said earlier about the original topic and this one, I see a bridge here that I would like to ask you. What were the steps and tactical things that you created within your own team that allowed for the space to allow folks to share of their personal selves? Because folks have to have that psychological safety to bring those other things. So what did you do that has allowed this leadership role to allow folks to share of those challenging things they may not have brought up in previous organizations? So what have you done in that aspect, like specifically to allow them to be comfortable bringing that stuff up?
First of all, I lead by example. If something doesn't work out and I'm the accountable person for it, I acknowledge that in the course of a team meeting or an interaction with someone. You know, starting a business is, there's lots of roadmaps out there, but very few of them can really guide you towards success. You have to walk that path yourself. And in walking the path, I've had lots of mistakes, and I own up to those mistakes in an accountable fashion in front of my team and in front of the people that I'm expecting to execute on my behalf. And in doing so, by me taking accountability for my mistakes or shortcomings or failures, it creates an environment where they can feel comfortable doing the same. Because if I'm going to acknowledge my own mistake, it's okay, certainly, for others to acknowledge the shortcomings or lack of accountability that they may be experiencing in any one particular circumstance. So it's leadership by example. You have to do it yourself, show that it's okay, show that you're going to learn from it, and then move on. And that allows space for others to do the same.
Agree. Awesome. What is something that you thought we would be asking you about that we did not ask about?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think the approach that you take to leadership and sort of really honing in on mistakes is a valuable way for leaders to think. I believe leaders, many of us, are not reflective enough. We don't take the time to sift through our experiences and to understand that we learn infinitely more from failure than we do from success any day of the week. And amplifying these failures, missteps, shortcomings, whatever the case may be, is the only way that you're going to improve. Because the truth of the matter is, you will not carry along with you all of the successes that you have in your professional career. In fact, I can barely remember most of the successes, but I will tell you that the failures stick. They have a lasting effect, and the hope is that you've learned from them in such a way that you reduce the risk of you making those same mistakes again and again. Not completely eliminate, but just reduce.
Well, MK, I hope you will remember the success of this podcast, because it certainly was not a failure. So we want to make sure that it's top of mind for you, that you'll remember. How do folks get in touch with you?
Pretty prolific on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm there as MK Palmore on LinkedIn, and we have a company page there for Apogee Global, or you can go to the apogeeglobalrms.io website and submit a contact form there. But LinkedIn's probably the easiest.
Good. And that's MK and Palmore, Palmore.
You got it.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. We really appreciate you bringing light to something that was, very important in our world and our society and the way we interact with people, bringing the people experience to the forefront. Thank you for allowing us to alter the conversation slightly and move towards communication, which I think really help for those emerging leaders who listen to our podcast on a regular basis. So we're going to end our podcast today, like we do all of our Cohesion Culture programs, with this simple mantra. You don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.